So it takes no energy to create a universe. Universes are for free. A universe is a free lunch. And then you may say to yourself, well, that can't be right.
Essentially, you can get a universe from nothing without any supernatural shenanigans. That basically, by quantum mechanics and the laws of physics we understand in principle, an entire universe with 100 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars, can come from nothing because its total energy could be zero. And therefore, you don't need to literally violate any laws of physics to create a universe. And no, we don't know that for certain.
In other words, the universe is for free.
Because there are laws, such as gravity, the universe can, and will, create itself from nothing.
And in fact, if you ask what would be the characteristics of a universe that was created from nothing just by the known laws of physics, it would be precisely the characteristics of the universe we live in. Again, that doesn't prove it, but it makes it quite plausible.
Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing. It is why the universe exists, why we exist.
Then how did we go from nothing to something?
Because in fact, if you add up all the energy in the universe, it looks like it's zero. Everything we see was once contained in a region smaller than the size of an atom. It's hard to imagine, but it's true. In fact, I wrote a whole book about it.
Yeah, and we talked about it on this program, I believe.
In the barest fraction of the first second, the universe inflated from something many, many, many times smaller than an atom to about the size of a grapefruit. Like, think of it this way, in much less than a blink of an eye, if it had originally been the size of a tennis ball, it would have inflated to over 90 billion light years across.
We believe, though we cannot yet prove, that our multiverse of universes is 11-dimensional. So think of this 11-dimensional arena. And in this arena, there are bubbles that float, and the skin of the bubble represents an entire universe. So we're like flies trapped on flypaper. We're on the skin of a bubble. It's a 3-dimensional bubble. The 3-dimensional bubble is expanding, and that's called the Big Bang Theory.
Our universe is just a small random accident in a vast multiverse, and it's fascinating because it means as each universe sort of pops out, falls out of inflation, it can fall out in a different way. It's like falling down a mountain. You can fall in lots of different directions. And each different direction that you leave inflation, in some sense, could give different laws of physics in that region of space, or at least certain different laws of physics. And if that's the case, it may be that many of the fundamental laws that we see and think are truly fundamental are just accidents of our experience. It could be in each universe there are different laws of physics, and that may help explain other paradoxes about the universe we see.
So we're nothing but a soap bubble floating in a bubble bath of soap bubbles. And so, in some sense, the multiverse can be likened to a bubble bath. Our universe is nothing but one bubble, but there are other bubbles. When two bubbles collide, that could merge into a bigger bubble, which could be the Big Bang.
Moreover, beyond our own universe, there might be an endless number of other universes bubbling into frothy eternity like a pot of pasta, water boiling over.
In fact, that's what probably the Big Bang is. Or perhaps a bubble fissioned in half and split off into two bubbles. That could be the Big Bang.
Some people get upset that we change the meaning of nothing.
Or perhaps the universe popped into existence out of nothing. That is also a possibility.
Most of the religious people who object to my definition of nothing never defined it themselves. What they like to, here's what their definition of nothing is. It's nothing is that from which only God can create something. But, they create this useless definition.
And so the universe could essentially be nothingness, which was unstable and created a soap bubble. Now you may say to yourself, well, that can't be right, because that violates the conservation of matter and energy. How can you create a universe from nothing?
And space-time was created by the Big Bang, thus time didn't exist before the Big Bang, so it doesn't make much sense to ask what happened before it. There was no then. Of course, this, like many ideas in cosmology, doesn't really make any sense to our puny human brains. It's largely beyond our comprehension.
Otherwise, very speculative ideas, because inflation, even though it was well motivated, is based on physics we've never measured. Physics at what we call the grand unified scale. And without an empirical handle, it's all just talk.
The highest dimension is 11. You cannot go beyond 11. because universes become unstable beyond 11.
We have now, in some sense, hit the Holy Grail. Just a few months ago, the announcement was made of observations that really turn metaphysics into physics, that take us back literally to a millionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, which is a time frame I never thought we'd be able to observe directly. And if they hold up, and I should say that it's just a single observation right now, and in science we have to be quite skeptical. It has to be confirmed before we can really rely on it, but will allow us to test theories about the beginning of our universe and potentially the existence of other universes. In a sense, it explains why we're here, because it turns out, and it's an amazing accident, and these were ideas that were developed 40 years ago, and we hadn't yet been able to test them, that the only reason the particles in our body have mass that can form together to form us and everything we see on Earth is it's an accident.
Because it turns out if you take a bunch of hydrogen and you wait like several billion years, you might just grow yourself some humans.
I love to watch science fiction movies, but I cringe. I cringe whenever I see a depiction of the aliens. First of all, the aliens speak perfect English. Not just British English, they speak perfect American English. And obviously, they're a human inside some kind of monkey suit.
When we physicists look for alien civilizations, we don't look for little green men.
When we physicists look in outer space for alien life, we don't look for little green men. We look for type 1, type 2, and type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization has harnessed planetary power. They control earthquakes, the weather, volcanoes. They have cities on the ocean. Anything planetary, they control. That's type 1. A planetary civilization. A civilization that resembles something out of Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. A type 2 civilization is stellar. They consume so much energy, they can play with stars. That's, for example, the Federation of Planets in Star Trek. Star Trek would represent a typical type 2 civilization.
They play with stars. They are immortal. Nothing known to science can destroy a type 2 civilization.
Then we have type 3, which is galactic. And the empire of Star Wars would correspond to a type 3 civilization. Now, what are we on this scale? Now, on this scale, are we type 1 that control hurricanes? Are we type 2 that control star systems? Are we type 3 that roam the galactic space lanes? No, we're type 0. The transition between type 0 and type 1. And that's where we are today. And so this transition is perhaps the most important transition of all time. Some people don't want it. They fear this transition because this transition is to a planetary civilization tolerant of many cultures. These are the terrorists. In their gut, they fear this because they know they are witnessing the birth pangs of a beginning of a new planetary civilization, and the terrorists want nothing to do with it. What is terrorism? Terrorism, in some sense, is a reaction against the creation of a type 1 civilization. They don't like the march toward a type 1 civilization. Now, which tendency will win? I don't know, but I hope that we emerge as a type 1 civilization. But when we look at outer space, we see no evidence of type 1, 2, or 3 anywhere. No evidence whatsoever. The mathematics say that there should be thousands of type 1, 2, and 3 civilizations in the galaxy. We see no evidence of any whatsoever.
I was going to say thank you very much. I mean, that's, as a science journalist, my question is, through your career and your writing and your acting, you've inspired so many people to enter the sciences. How do you balance science with science fiction? They're both the same.
It's emitted, bam, it's in your, as far as it's concerned, it is in your eye in that same
Can
instant.
we measure that photon and
Yes.
observe the Big Bang?
I know that came from the Big Bang, and I'm watching it, and it's taken 13.8 billion years to reach you, but if you are that photon, it does not experience that time delay.
What a great science fiction story that is.
Instantaneous. If
if you're very, very stupid, how can you possibly realize that you're very, very stupid? You'd have to be relatively intelligent to realize how stupid you are.